Hello, LinkedIn. Welcome, everybody. So happy to be here today. Thank you for joining us for a really special topic. We're excited to talk today about what drives successful nonprofit collaboration here in the nonprofit sector. So, we're going to jump in. We are down one speaker at the moment. We're hoping she's going to pop in here for a second, but just being super transparent, we may have some more folks come in. If you don't know who we are, the Nonprofit Hive was built by and for the nonprofit community. And this is our way of kind of highlighting some of our members who are driving nonprofit collaborations worldwide. We have people from both the US and India joining us today. We're going to have them introduce themselves in a second. Whether you're watching live or on replay, feel free to jump in the comments, say hi, say where you're joining us from, tell us a bit about your organization. If you've got a cool nonprofit collab story, feel free to throw it in there as well. Before we dive in too far, I want to say a big shout out thank you to Christine Preziosi of Preziosi Event Productions because she is helping make this session possible today. Her and her team provide an amazing gut check and creative soundboarding for events in the nonprofit sector. And they have these cool soundboard sessions they are offering now to help make sense of your vision and just provide that clarity you need to move forward with your nonprofit events. I'm Tasha. Hopefully, many of you probably already know me. Super excited to be here. This is actually the last facilitated session I'm doing this year before we have our own community members jumping in to facilitate. So super excited for those of you who are here. And I'm really excited to start introducing my amazing speakers for this panel. So without further ado, Shafkat, can you please jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization?
Thank you, Tasha, so much for this lovely opportunity. This is my first LinkedIn Live with Tasha, and I'm very much excited. So I'm Shafkat Alam, and I'm one of the Joint Secretary of Tiljala Society for Human and Educational Development. In short, we say Tiljala Shed, like providing shed shelter to the waste pickers communities. So we are an organization based in Kolkata, India, and we are basically working for the upliftment of the waste pickers communities through holistic education and livelihood.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Naji, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hey, guys. My name is Naji Al-Subai, and I'm the founder and president of Pure Minds, a nonprofit that's dedicated to providing mental health services that's really culturally relevant and culturally tailored to demographics such as the Middle Eastern, North African, and South Asian communities through means of peer mentorship, peer group support, and culturally tailored education. And I'm really excited to be here. Thanks, Tasha.
Two amazing groups. Love this. Thank you both, longtime community members, and just super excited to hear your take on successful nonprofit collaboration. And we're going to come at this from a couple of angles. Again, comments, please feel free to throw them in because we do plan on bringing some of what you have to say about collaboration in this sector to the table. I want to talk about what's holding collaboration back in this sector because I think we all kind of see it, but let's name it. Let's talk about it a little bit. What does it look like to have real collaboration, and how do we build partnerships that are really strategic and not just symbolic? Because I think we've had a lot of symbolic collaborations in the sector. I made a small complaint on LinkedIn myself about a lot of people talking to me about collaboration, and we need to start talking about what does it look like to make something, possible and meaningful when it comes to collaboration. So we're going to kick this off. And our first question, and Shafkat, I'm going to post this to you first, but we often talk about that it takes more than just good intentions, but what's one factor you found that's really critical to making real partnerships work?
I would like to start by saying that why do collaborations succeed and why do they fail? If I could put the question like that. So collaboration fails when scarcity mindset fuels competition for donors, leading to duplication, burnout, and mission drift. It succeeds when organizations let go of fear, align missions, and co-create with communities, turning isolation into shared impact.
Absolutely.
Like I believe that it's my personal thing. I believe non-profits are like superheroes. We have all got our unique superpowers like education, mental health, environment, women empowerment. The problem is too often we fly isolation. We want to go always single. Everything want to do single-handed. So
Yeah.
just give you an example, real life examples. We have all watched Avengers movie. Imagine the Avengers movie if Iron Man never talked to Captain America, or if the Hulk refused to join because there was no free lunch. That's what failed collaboration looks like. Because when non-profits truly collaborate, when we share resources, ideas, and even failures, it's not just impact, it's impact at superhero scale. That's what I would believe that.
I love this because I'm a huge Marvel nerd. So you found my love right off the bat. My children and I, every new one that comes out. And you're so right, because too often, I think when we hear about nonprofit collaboration, they're trying to push for collaboration between nonprofits that are already quite alike. And that's not a negative. Sometimes that's a great way, especially if programming is different, there's an opportunity for collaboration. But I also think too, we're not always looking at how can we work in tandem where we have something complementary to do together. Naji, what would you add to this?
I just want to start off by saying that Shafkat took the example that I wanted to use, because I also am a fanatic of superheroes and the nerd culture. I attend New York Comic-Con every year. That's just
Oh my goodness.
I know, that's just how big a fan I am. But yeah, to kind of complement what he said, nonprofits are like superheroes, right? So everyone has their each unique individual abilities, right? And coming together is what makes the mission more impactful, right? And they all have their own individual missions as well. So that's a lot of success that can be taken from that. There are some challenges that go along the way with collaboration, right? So, it goes back to that saying in terms of staying in your lane, right? Understanding what your roles are in terms of collaborating with that other nonprofit. What are your roles as nonprofit A and what's their roles as nonprofit B, right? Are you in charge of taking care of things like digital marketing, community outreach, while the other ones are taking care of more like strategic, more like maybe strategic outreach or programming development or whatnot, depending on what that partnership looks like, right? So I know I've had a few examples with that in my previous nonprofit roles and collaborations, and where it gets really meshed up together, and that causes a lot of chaos along the way, right? So understanding your roles, that's the first point. Second point I want to talk about is really accountability. Being accountable and responsible and consistent with your own tasks and duties. Are you delivering what you need to do in a timely basis, right? Are you doing what you need to do so that way it doesn't affect your own nonprofit and it doesn't affect the partnership that's going on with the other collaborator as well, right? And again, I know we briefly talked about this, is the mission alignment, right? Making sure that your mission, both of your missions, maybe this is a multiple partnership, right? Making sure that they all intertwine some way somehow and are similar, right? Who do you want to serve and how? How do you want to serve that demographic or that community or the people are in need, whatever it may be, in terms of services? What are the similarities and differences in your programs that you're providing on an individual basis, and ways that can be brought together, superhero-wise, right? We're going back to that can be brought back together to reach a broader audience.
Yeah.
Right? So these are the three top things that I deal with when it comes to collaborations with other nonprofits or other organizations, right?
I love this. I think too, I started to bring this in because I had the file and then I couldn't figure out how to put it in. But one of the things we did kind of recently with the Nonprofit Hive in preparation for this amazing session with the two of you was ask the question of what's a red flag, right? What is a red flag in the sector when we start going, what makes it hard? And I think you touched on something so beautiful with what you had said, Naji, and that, we need to understand what our roles are, and one org can't control everything. One person can't take all the credit, right? All of this deliveries when it's all talk and no shared work. so much of it came back down to that piece. And it comes back to power again, right? With how do we equitably look at power and nonprofit as well within nonprofit, not just externally with potentially donors and groups like that as well. But it was interesting to see how quickly people jumped on exactly what you highlighted there, was this roles and those critically being laid out well in advance of getting started with partnership being really, really important. So my next question, Naji, we're going to go back right to you on this one, but there's limited time capacity. I mean, we talk about this all the time in nonprofit, right? Time is of the essence. We don't have any time, but how do you kind of understand what partnerships are worth pursuing? Because we only have such a limited availability to really go down that path. And we're always trying to move our mission forward without draining our team.
For sure. I mean, it comes down to, at least for me in my experience, with one term, right? Assessment. We're assessing our own and their strategy and goals for what this partnership is looking like. What's the duration of this partnership, right? Is it a project-based partnership or is it a long-term continuing one, right? Is there, what's the frequency of this partnership? Is it maybe once in a year kind of partnership based on a project? And this is what I've done with one of my own, not my own, but another nonprofit that I was part of that does humanitarian efforts, right? So that's its own thing, right? With the humanitarian efforts compared to other missions and programs. What are the timelines? What are you looking to do? When do you want to get this accomplished? How long do you want to keep this going on for, right? Again, so, and keeping in mind the kind of organizations that you are, whether you're still a startup nonprofit and you're limited on your sources compared to another nonprofit where they've been around much longer and they have a lot more resources, but also with them, it's a matter of time capacity because they have to dedicate so much and they have to focus on more numbers compared to the smaller organization, right? So again, going back, we're thinking about the duration of the partnership, the frequency, how often are you going to be partnering up with them, and what are the timelines and achievables for that?
That's great. Shafkat, your nonprofit is what I would call a legacy nonprofit at this point. You have been around serving your community, your second generation, leader at your nonprofit now. What would you add to this, because I'm sure you have had many partnerships. How have you known which ones to pursue and where the cost is too high? Oh, your mic is muted, my friend.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I would first like to resonate what Naji said. Exactly, but adding to what he said is, we first ask, does this collaboration help the children and women we serve? That is the first question we ask. If it is aligns with our mission, adds unique resources or expertise, and respects the community voices, then it's worth it. But if it feels donor-driven or misaligned, we step back. At Tinjana Shared, we ask one simple question first: will this really help the communities we serve? So we decide on the community. For example, I'm just giving an example. Partnering with local schools to co-run after-school programs worked because it reduced duplication and gave children stronger support systems. On the other hand, we step back when collaboration feels donor-driven or misaligned with community needs.
That's fantastic. And I think that's actually something that can be very hard to do. Would love to hear from people in the comments who've experienced this, but when it's donor driven, but it results in more funding, that's so hard to step back from, right? It can be so hard, especially if you're a small nonprofit, lean nonprofit. In Naji's case, he's got this brilliant new community very community focused Pure Minds nonprofit. It's so hard to step back when funding is still a critical consideration from potentially a donor-driven partnership. That's great. I love the comments coming in here. great test. Will it really help serve the community? Naji, I'd just like to hear because I kind of singled you out here as a newer nonprofit yourselves, even though you've been in this sector a long time. What does that look like as a very newly founded nonprofit with that partnership cost? Because at the same time, you're trying to gain brand voice and brand awareness a little bit too.
For sure. And with me, it comes down to strategy, again, being very strategic. Anyone who has really worked with me and really knows me knows I like to use my brain a lot, right? So strategizing how we can complement each other, right? This is the mission that we're trying to serve. Whether we may need help in terms of capacity, this other organization can probably help in that. But that organization lacks within that particular program or idea that we're trying to implement for the community. So that really attracts them and says, hey, we really like what you're doing. It's very unique. It's very specific. How can we jump on board with that? What are some resources that you need on our end? And we'll let you know what we'll need on your end as well, right? So again, strategizing what that looks like and being mindful of what you can and cannot do.
That's great. So our next question we're going to talk about, and I kind of hinted at it a little bit, is there's a lot of power and control when we talk about collaborations that I think is a little scary to talk about as nonprofits, right? We're always a little bit concerned about judging how other people run their nonprofits. What's the right way? Is there a right way? It's all I always find in so much of nonprofit, there's a little bit of you can follow a little bit of a guideline, but there is a bit of a uniqueness to nonprofits that make it really hard to go, oh, this nonprofit will clearly be able to collaborate with this one. I don't see that always being the case. It's often a case-by-case basis. But when these power dynamics show up, because we've got community partners, donors, larger institutions, how do you look at power and control and, giving some of it up? How do you retain some power in these relationships? And I'm going to actually put this to Shafkat first to talk about power and control.
Thank you, Tasha. So as at Tinjala Sheth, you are a very grassroots NGO, as you all know. We balance power by centering community voices, making them co-creators, and not beneficiaries, like most of our NGOs treat them as beneficiaries. With larger institutions, we share our unique value, that is trust, ground level access, and lived experience. Real power sharing means amplifying the smallest voices and making it the loudest. At Tinjala Sheth, we know power dynamics are part of every partnership. As a smaller grassroots NGO, we balance this by putting the community at the center, our girls, our mothers, our youth. And they are not just beneficiaries, they are our co-creators of every program. With donors and larger institutions, we share what we uniquely bring: deep trust, ground level access, and lived experience that big organizations often lack.
I would totally agree. I think those are all things that can be actually more challenging at a bigger level. I know our mutual friend Amina Mohammed is on here, and I'm sure she could talk about ethical storytelling for all of us and give us an education on that, because that's a real part of the lived experience. But how do we bring it ethically to the table as well? But Naji, what would you add to that with that power dynamics? Smaller organizations, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, we've navigated those before in my previous nonprofits. And the thing I'll say to that as a starting point is really staying true to who you are as a leader, as a professional, and staying true to your organization, right? So know what's in your control and know what's not. We are, for example, let's say Pure Minds is approaching a larger organization, right? I know what Pure Minds is. I know what Pure Minds can do, right? Despite the size and the experience and the longevity of each of the organizations, I'm aware of what I can provide, and I know what you can provide. So, and it goes back to my previous point in terms of like almost kind of staying in their lanes, but we want to make this work, right? We want to merge when it's necessary. So again, staying true to who you are as a nonprofit, knowing what your mission is, knowing what your capabilities are, and showcasing to them, to the larger organization, that, hey, we want to work with you, but we know what we can do and we know what you can do. So making sure that that's communicated at the very beginning of that. So that way it shows the large organization, hey, they may be smaller, but they seem experienced, right? And they come from what Shafkat said, lived experience. We've done this before, we've lived this before, and we know how to implement it properly, right? We just need more of the capacity or whatever the reason is for that collaboration.
I think this is bringing up so many things that, interestingly enough, is something that we're trying to figure out even at the nonprofit hive, is as we grow, as we have this beautiful community, as we have resources coming in from many different countries, different people who want to help support our community with conversations about grants or fundraising or all of these different zones of genius that they can do to support us. How do we as the nonprofit hive decide to act with them? And the thing that Nicole, who's probably on this and is going to have a little giggle about it, but we're very much working on, for the nonprofit hive, what's our mission and vision, so we can be clear to those people who just are casually reaching out, being like, let's collaborate, let's partner. Do they know what we're about, right? Like, are all they seeing just Tasha being loud on LinkedIn and they're like, oh, I'd love to be involved with this, not really knowing where we're headed, what we could bring to the table, being clear about what we can't bring to the table as a small, lean team right now, because there's lots that I shouldn't be taking on, right? And hilariously, our next LinkedIn Live is about boundary setting and saying no. And I'm so glad we're having that conversation too, because it's really critical in the sector. But I do think that there are many small nonprofits that actually have they have the trust in a way that larger nonprofits sometimes don't have, right, in their communities. And love all the comments coming in on the side, guys. You guys are amazing. I think this is just fantastic. I love Addie. Culture matters, right? And cross-cultural settings. I think that's such a great point. Navigating that as well here in the nonprofit hive with members all over the world. Shafkat, it's evening. He's late at night in India, and Naji's in the US. Like, we have a big, huge community serving many people all over, and navigating those cultural settings is enormous when we talk about partnership.
Tasha,
and yeah.
Can I just add an extra point?
I would love to. Yeah.
Well, be careful, because this has happened, and it can be it can be a very slippery slope, but be careful not to blur the vision of your organization when it comes to collaborating, because people can be tempted. Smaller organizations can be tempted by the larger ones and the more experienced ones to say, hey, we can help you with this, so you can reach a broader audience, right? And then staying true to that organization in terms of what you want to serve and how you want to do it becomes very blurry and becomes very mixed up, to the point where you no longer know what to do, what the actual existence of the organization is anymore, and you lose track and you lose sight of what you wanted to do in the first place, right?
Yeah.
I've been approached by that, right? And I have dealt with different nonprofit leaders where, hey, these guys want to collaborate with us, or we want to collaborate with them. But again, where's the alignment in that? Is there any benefit for both of us to reach our audience in a way that's consistent, that's actually impactful, as opposed to just getting our names out there in a sense?
Absolutely.
Right? Be careful about vision blurring.
I think that's really, really great advice. And it's almost like you have to come back to that constantly, right? You need that little like vision board. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're working on right now. And I will say, one of the things that is always challenging, both in nonprofit and in my startup experience right now, is the nonprofit world and social impact is changing so rapidly, right? New technologies are coming in. It makes it look like you can do more than you ever could before. And that in and of itself is a slippery slope, because it makes you go, I could do 10x marketing because I got this new fancy tool. But should that allow for more collaboration time, or should it be more investment into fundraising? That's another whole huge conversation. But I do agree, and I love that. That's a really good point that I'm going to keep at the top of my mind right now. collaboration can mean letting go. And I'm just as bad as anybody for going, especially as someone who's a founder. I know there's many other founders on this call, or there's people who join nonprofit because they feel very, very invested in what their nonprofit does, very passion driven. How do we work towards finding that space of building trust and shared ownership with another nonprofit organization? And I'm going to put this to you first, Naji.
Oh, well, I mean, this is a tough one, right? Because it's the thing that we deal with the most, right? It's time and effort, right? Dedicating the proper time and effort to this collaboration and this partnership while not deteriorating away or neglecting your actual organization on the individual level, the programs, the staff, the administration, whatever it may be. So we're always caught in between that because we want to maintain, we're so focused on trying to maintain that relationship. This relationship is very important. It is very important. Okay, but what about your in-house relationships? What about your in-house operations that's going on? That needs to be the top priority, right? And it's never easy to find a balance. But rely on the people that support you, making sure that that communication is in place with that collaborator. Because again, when I speak from lived experience. And in my previous roles, we've had a lot of those where we were dedicating too much time to this collaboration or this partnered fundraiser, annual fundraiser that we're trying to work on together. We're putting in too much time for that, and it's taking away from the beneficiaries and the people that are in need of our actual day-to-day programs and services. So putting the boundaries in place first and foremost, right? Making sure and acknowledging that, hey, we're both busy nonprofits. We need to make sure that we create the right balance as best as we can, right? There are situations, realistically speaking, where we have to provide more time for this and provide more time for that, right? But just make sure you do not forget to dedicate and allocate the proper time to your own projects.
Yeah, Nicole threw this in and she's very, very right. But particularly for nonprofits where hiring a new person just to handle a collaboration, I don't ever hear of this. That's not a thing, right? Hiring a new person to manage a program, but just for a collaboration, it doesn't happen as often, especially if you're a smaller nonprofit. It's instead, this collaboration may take away from something else, and either that has to be okay. But I do love this, again, coming back to that core value, which should be your team, right? And the obligations you've probably already made to your community. What would you throw in here, Shafkat, when it comes to, building trust and that shared ownership piece with collaboration?
Shared ownership is very, very important to us, actually. I will just give you a small example. Like at Tanzila Shared, we have learned that collaboration only works when we are willing to loosen our grip on ownership, which NGOs generally don't do. One example is in our education and after-school programs. So in the past, we wanted full visibility for the work we were doing with children from Raktikar communities. But when we partnered with local schools or clubs or peer NGOs, we realized that insisting on sole branding or recognition would only create barriers. So we have also had to go off rigid ways of working. Community voices often challenge our plans, and sometimes we have to set aside our own designs to adopt what mothers or girls themselves suggested. In those moments, giving up control actually deepened shared ownership and made the outcomes more sustainable.
I love this. This is really cool. I think it's so interesting to see, the compromise piece of collaboration is huge. But I think one thing that you guys have said here again, and we'll probably keep coming back to as part of this, would love to hear from others. There's a great side conversation. Elena, I see your lovely messages in here too. Ingrid shared ownership. I love this. But there's an investment here too into our own teams and our own visions first. And then I think we have the opportunity to collaborate, but we don't have to be stuck in our ways of how we've always done things too. And this is something that's come across all of our LinkedIn lives that we've done over the last 9 months, has been, there's lots of new ways of doing things. We should try to embrace those when it makes sense to, but maybe we also have to bring this to the idea of how nonprofits collaborate in the first place. And this is another place to kind of shake things up, right? When it comes to the nonprofit world, is what does it look like to collaborate? And maybe it's not that carefully co-branded exact credit like you were talking about, Shafkat. Maybe it has to come down to instead everyone feeling some ownership as well. I've got this lovely comment from Deb. Is the juice worth the squeeze? That's great. Fantastic. All right. I'm going to come back and we're going to, Naji, we are in actually to our bonus questions. We have a little bit more time to add some in here. Anybody who has questions, comments, things they'd like to throw in, please continue to do so. We've got about another 5 or 10 minutes and we will have time for some questions if people have them. But we hear the phrase, this like idea of collaboration over competition. And you know me, I love a good collaboration. Competition in nonprofit drives me nuts. But why is it that actually kind of hard to live out in this sector? What actually makes it hard to move towards collaboration instead of competition? Sorry, Naji, I'm going to ask you. No, that's okay.
So, I mean, I've dealt with this so many times where it's always the nonprofit versus the for-profit, right? And what the ideology behind that is. And that's, I always just say we're in the sector of service, right? We're here to serve people. We're not here to make a profit out of a product or out of something else, right? These are programs. These are people that we're giving back to, right? So keeping that mindset consistent and keeping that, having that let you go all the time is something that's really meaningful, I would say, right? It's really meaningful to what you want to do as an organization. You're showcasing that collaboration is a positive thing, right? There's a balance of what you can do and what others can do and making that work again, right? Like we said, it's going back to the Avengers or the Justice League or anything of that sort. So we're not competing for business profit, right? Even though sometimes it makes it feel like that. And there's, little voices in our heads are like, this is still a competition in terms of fundraising, in terms of this or in terms of that. But that's what I love about the nonprofit sector is how many collaborations and how many partnerships and just how many relationships at the end of the day, how many relationships that we built along the way because we're in this sector of service for other people, right? And that's what that's what our donor base sees. That's what our community members, that's what our beneficiaries see. Like, great. The more collaboration we see, the bigger we see the sector as a whole and the more that we can invest into it.
I think too, one thing nonprofit, like, and again, I'm blanket statementing the whole friggin' sector, which is enormous and probably should not be done. But I do think that there's a health indicator to the rest of for-profit when nonprofits can collaborate. That actually looks very healthy because in for-profit, collaborations happen often, right? Partnerships happen often, especially for small businesses. They make connections, relationships, they come into collaborations. I'm living in startup land. Mm-hmm. That's a goal, right? Oftentimes you're trying to find partnerships and you're really out there making it happen. When nonprofits can't figure out how to collaborate and there is this perceived competition, even at others who look at us in this sector, what does that mean, right? What does that indicate, I guess, in terms of health of the sector when we struggle with collaboration? Shafkat, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think, Tasha, what makes it really hard is the scarcity mindset. Sorry to put you like that this way. What makes it hard is the scarcity mindset in the nonprofit sector. Insecurity. With limited donors, NGOs often compete for the same support, which creates isolation. Letting go of the fear of losing out and focusing on the bigger mission, children staying in school, girls delaying in marriage, families breaking cycles of poverty, is this what allows collaboration to actually happen. But most of the time, NGOs look at, like, oh, my donor will go away. Like, I can give you a small example, what happened in the past. Somebody really wanted us to work in the disability sector. So we are not an expert. We don't work on disability. You know what we did? And they were like the donor were friends, and they wanted to compel us, like emotionally compelling us, requesting us to do this, and there can be support. I said, sir, we are not an expert. We have never done such things in life. So what we did is we found the best NGO who is working in disability and connected them. They were not happy, but eventually it worked out. And I said, in the future, if you happen to work in the sector which I'm working, I'm happy to collaborate. So because I don't want to do something which I have never done.
Yes. I love this, and perfect timing here. Amina jumped in. Naji, I'll let you jump in on this too. But sometimes we're not the right fit, right? Like lots of conversations have happened and it's clear that it's maybe not the right fit. But I love that that culture of like generosity to go, I know someone, right? And how powerful would that be that if you know two nonprofits and you know of both of them, but you're not the right person to collaborate with either, that like that idea that we could start driving that forward. Naji, you look like you had something to say.
Just one line, Tasha. And after the collaboration, we got a big cake to our office. The nonprofit gave a big cake as a gratitude, showing their gratitude to us. So this is what collaboration feels like. That's what I feel.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Be the middleman, right? Like that's okay. Sometimes we don't know all the many nonprofits that are out there. So I love when nonprofits introduce nonprofits to each other. It's a power move for this sector to do that. And it is something that happens in for-profit all the time, right? So Naji, do you have anything to add to that? You look like you had something to say.
Yes, Shafkat, take the cake. Good for you, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But this is why I think Pure Minds is so special, right? Because we know who we are. I know who I am as an individual, as a professional, and someone in the nonprofit sector. And part of my strategy is to continue relationship building, right? Even sometimes before expanding Pure Minds itself, relationship building with people that I know provide a certain service, right? Because some people or many people assume Pure Minds is a clinical organization, where I say Pure Minds is more of a social organization. We don't focus too much on clinical services, but because we build relationships with the right people, we can properly refer you to them, right? And that's what keeps my relationships going with other partners and collaborators that are, again, under the same mission alignment in terms of mental health support and wellness in general, right? So I focus on what they focus on, especially, right? So one organization or institution can focus on, physical well-being and wellness. We're just throwing examples there. So I know that if you're in need of this and you hear about Pure Minds, but Pure Minds is not really able to provide that yet, but it is in the long-term strategy for us, right? For them, but in the meantime, we're going to take you to, I don't necessarily call them collaborator or a partner. Whatnot. I say we're going to take you to our friend. These are our friends. These are our organizational friends that we're going to help support their mission. And by doing that, they're still on board with us. They're still with us in some sort of capacity or some sort of, positive entanglement with it. So that's why, starting to blank out here a little bit, but that's what I feel is so special about Pure Minds in particular. And being a professional based off of the actual lived experiences and really learning, taking these lessons and applying them to your professional development. So these are really important to have.
I love this. Fantastic. And comments, so many great people with ideas. We do have one question that came in from Dennis that I'm going to pull up. I'm totally interested, and I am not an expert in this at all. So if any of our other people in the comments would like to answer Dennis's question or have ideas, please feel free to jump in as well. But Dennis here has a great question, really coming from that legal and compliance structure side, right? Like, yes, it's great. I love partnerships. I think we need to have those. And I see, Michelle, you also said the words service level agreement. There are some important pieces to some of these collaborations becoming more formal, in either of your experiences in your time in this sector. When we're talking about long-term success of a collaboration, how has that legal or compliance structure thing, like piece of it, come into play for either of you? And Shafkat, I'll let you answer this first.
Are you talking about the as a Dennis question?
Yeah, Dennis's question. Yeah.
What legal or compliance structures do you believe are most critical for ensuring long-term success and accountability in a profit? Uh, I think in respective countries you have different legal compliances, and definitely like our non-profit is a mid-sized organization, but 38 years ago we just started from scratch, from zero, from nothing, and my father was the first slum graduate from the slum where we belong. He was from the slum community, and he was the first law graduate. So he started building blocks, and I've seen that as a child. So you have to follow the law of the land. You have to follow, and he learned from other organizations. He learned from bigger organizations. He also was volunteering to a lot of Christian organizations as when he was very young, and he didn't knew how to run a non-profit. He had no knowledge. I'm talking about early 80s, when in India having an NGO was something only missionaries of charity was doing. But
Yeah.
there were NGOs like us, nobody knew. So he started building blocks. He had to get knowledge. There was no computer, there was no internet. So he got the knowledge from other NGO friends, from other non-profit friends who guided him. You have to do this, do that. And now all the information is so easy. I think we are living in a digital era. Now the information is very easy, and compliance is very easy. You just have to follow the rules and regulations. And if you want to grow big, if you want the non-profit to become big, you have to follow compliance, and you have to because initially my father told me that he never hired anybody, he was doing himself. So if you don't have that much budget, you take the help of online, or you take the help of non-profit hive. The non-profit hive may connect you with somebody in your country who is already running a successful non-profit. They might come into the picture, and that what's a successful non-profit collaboration looks like. That will be the living example what we are discussing here today.
Absolutely. I love that. Naji, I know we have a lot, Nonprofit Hive is 65% Americans. So we very much have quite a core American component, with legal and compliance structures in your past roles and now as a newer founder. What would you give for advice to Dennis?
Yeah, so a lot of nonprofits that I've been part of have all been in that so-called startup phase, right? Whether they've been around for 10 or 7 years or less, right? So making sure to instill the the legal or compliance structures, making sure that they're instilled into the skeleton of the organization, right? Get this knowledge and utilize the resources as best as you can from the very beginning, right? Because it relies on that, right? And past experiences, I've been a part of other nonprofits that, in terms of the compliance structures, they weren't really placed yet because they were more program focused or service focused, which is not a bad thing, right? But making sure that everything is secured for that, right? In order for you to act properly for the community or on behalf of your organization. So utilize as many resources as you can. Get the legal advice or compliance structures, knowing what's in your backyard first before seeing what's out there in the field, right? In your backyard, as in, well, my nonprofit is in New York, right? What are the legal structures for New York State? That may differ from, I don't know, Virginia or something like that. So yeah, being as informed as possible, and instilling that and implementing that into the skeleton of the organization, and you will have a lot less to worry about. Trust me. Yeah.
That's fantastic. This is amazing, everybody. The energy the two of you bring to every conversation. I know I've chatted with both of you one-to-one. I was so excited to have this conversation because I think collaboration, and I think it was our friend Dan in here made a really great comment, and I couldn't keep up, guys, the comments. You're going to have to go back afterwards and read through all of these because there are so many wonderful things being said in the comments here. But I think Dan, and correct me if I'm wrong, I can't find it now, of course, Dan was saying about collaboration has never probably been more critical than it is right now. And it's also more possible. We have this beautiful place. All you folks just found us on LinkedIn. You're here. The Nonprofit Hive community built off of LinkedIn. I now have wonderful connections all over the world through this community. there are nonprofits out there that could be great collaborators for you, and such great advice from both of you on what you can bring to the table in terms of building out a successful collaboration. We're going to wrap this up. Thanks to everybody in the comments. I do want to, again, Shafkat, please go connect with him. Follow the incredible work they're doing on Tijala Shed. It has one of the coolest, social medias out there for sure. Naji with Pure Minds, and he's, this is someone who's a new founder, but with such a wealth of knowledge in the sector as well. Make sure to go and connect with these two wonderful humans. Thank you both so much. And just a last minute shout out to our sponsor who made this possible for us. And we're the Nonprofit Hive community. If you're not part of it, please come and join us. You get to talk with cool humans like this every Thursday who bring all of this to the table. And everyone who was just joining us over LinkedIn Live today, you're amazing. And we hope to see you in a couple of weeks where we're going to be back again, talking about boundaries and saying no in nonprofits. So that's sure to be another spicy topic. And Naji and Shafkat, thank you both so much.
I want to give Tasha a shout out. I'm going to give Tasha and the Nonprofit Hive a shout out. Without you, this network, this international network will not be here if it wasn't for you and the co-founding team. So you will forever have my gratitude with that. So thank you. And thank you for bringing me on this journey with the Hive in many different ways and bringing that light to Pure Minds and everyone's mission and organization. So it really comes down to you. So everybody, Thank you, Tasha. And to the founding team, thank you, Shafkat, and
thank you, Naji. And it's my turn. I have to have you to give me 10 seconds for that. Tasha, I have no words actually. It was because of your Nonprofit Hive. I never knew, as coming from India, and I know majority of the people don't know about Nonprofit Hive in India. I'm trying to reach out to many people to join your Nonprofit Hive, which I think is very important, because information is everything in the digital age, and the reach out, the reach out you are providing. I still remember the second chat I had with Jan Drucker, the first chat with Matthew Gans, and I still remember, so many every weeks of amazing people. Nonprofit Hive, all shout out goes to Nonprofit Hive and Tasha Van Black. I think you're doing something which I don't think other people are doing. You are really look like because you are an epitome, you're an example of what the topic today is. How do nonprofit collaboration looks like? This looks like Nonprofit Hive. Please, guys, come and register, and this is what looks like, and that's what I feel. And I just want to end with if you give me because with saving the world, it has always never been a solo mission. If you go to Avengers, there is a group of people always. So it's never been a solo mission. It always been a team sport. So for saving the world, all of us should come together and do the things. It's never an isolation. You have to work together to make a change. And that's the motto of Tijala Shed. That's how I believe. We believe change is possible. And it is possible right here, right now at the Nonprofit Hive.
Oh, my goodness. You guys are giving me all the big feels. I have to go back and do other things and work, and I'm not going to want to at all. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Really deeply appreciate you guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.